All right, let's put on our detective hats today because we're about to solve one of the biggest mysteries in the garden. We are going to uncover the hidden clues that tell you exactly what your soil needs to create a garden that doesn't just survive, but absolutely thrives.
So, does this sound familiar? You're out there watering, feeding, weeding, you feel like you're doing everything by the book, but your plants just look kind of sad. They're not taking off the way you expected. It's a really frustrating feeling, right? Well, that feeling is a major clue that the real culprit isn't what you're doing, but where you're doing it.
Because, more often than not, the problem isn't the plant at all. It's that hidden world right beneath the surface. Things like water puddling up after it rains, or the soil getting this hard crust when it's dry, or seeing roots that just refuse to grow deep. All of these are signs pointing to one thing. The real crime scene is the soil itself.
So let's get our hands dirty, shall we? We're going to investigate this unseen problem. We'll start by looking at the evidence that's happening below ground, so we can really understand how it affects everything you see up top.
Okay, here's our list of evidence. Do any of these look familiar to you? You know that sudden wilting you see on a warm afternoon? That's not just about the heat. That is a classic sign that the roots are trapped in that shallow top layer of soil and they just can't reach the deeper moisture. Yellowing leaves, patchy growth, these aren't just random plant issues. They're direct symptoms pointing to a much deeper problem.
To solve this mystery, we really need to get a handle on a core concept called soil vitality. Think of it like a juggling act. Healthy soil has to do three big jobs perfectly, all at once. It has to hold enough water for the plant, but not so much that it drowns the roots. It needs to hold enough air for the roots to breathe, but not so much that it dries out in a flash. And it has to release nutrients in a way the plant can actually use them. If any one of these jobs fails, the whole system just collapses. All right, now for the fun, hands-on part. Every good detective needs a toolkit, and we're about to give you some simple but super effective ways to read the clues your own soil is giving you. And the best part, no fancy lab equipment needed.
These are your 3 essential field tests. Seriously, they're simple, they're fast, and they will tell you almost everything you need to know about your soil's health and structure. Let's break them down one by one. First up, the water infiltration test. This couldn't be easier. Just pour a can of water over a 1 square foot patch of your garden. Now, healthy soil should soak all that water up in about 30 to 60 seconds. If it's still just sitting there in a puddle after a minute, bam! You found your first major clue. Your soil is compacted and it's blocking the flow.
Next is the spade slice test, and this is where you can really see the difference between a healthy home for your plants and a total crime scene. When you slice into good soil, it breaks apart into these nice rough crumbs. You can actually see little gaps and pores. But compacted soil, totally different story. It breaks off into flat plates, or it just smears on the spade. That dense, smooth face is a barrier. It literally blocks oxygen and stops roots dead in their tracks.
And finally, we have the squeeze test. Think of this as your timing clue. Before you ever start digging or planting, just grab a handful of soil and give it a good squeeze. If it forms a loose ball that kind of crumbles with a light tap, you are good to go. But if you can squeeze it into a slick, shiny ribbon, stop. Just stop. Working wet soil causes massive compaction, and you will undo all of your hard work. So, we've gathered our clues, we've diagnosed the problem. Now it's time to solve the case. We're going to move on to solutions that fix the very foundation of your garden for real, lasting change.
And this is so crucial. Structure is everything. I mean, you can use the best organic fertilizer in the world, you can water perfectly, but none of that matters if your plant's roots are physically blocked from growing. That's why fixing the soil structure is always the first and most important step.
Now, a really common instinct is to just buy a bag of new topsoil and throw it on top of the problem. But this is a classic mistake. When you dump fine, fluffy soil on top of dense, compacted soil, you create something called a shear plane. It's a boundary that's so different in texture that roots just won't cross it. It also traps water right at that boundary, creating this soggy, oxygen-starved zone that can completely stop your plants from growing.
So if you do need to add some soil, here's how to do it the right way. The key is moderation and integration. Only add about a 1 to 2 inch lift at a time. Then, and this is the most critical part, get a fork or a rake and lightly mix that new layer into the top few inches of your existing soil. What you're doing is blurring that hard line between the old and the new. It creates a gradual transition that basically invites roots and water to move downward instead of hitting that hard wall we were just talking about.
Okay, so we've made the big fixes. Now we've got to protect our investment.
This whole section is about adopting simple habits that will keep your soil healthy and prevent those old problems from ever coming back.
These are the repeat offenders right here. Every single time you step on damp soil, I mean, if you leave a footprint deeper than 1/4 of an inch, you are actively compacting it. You're squeezing out the air and crushing its structure. Heavy watering on bare soil can also form that hard crust on the surface, sealing it off. These little everyday actions can undo an entire weekend's worth of work in just a few seconds.
And here are the hero habits that fight back. And the solutions are just as simple. Create dedicated paths so you're not walking all over your growing areas. Keep the soil surface covered with mulch to protect it from pounding rain. And when you do need to cultivate, just lightly work the top 2 to 4 inches instead of doing some big aggressive tilling.
Look, improving soil is a long-term investigation. It's definitely not going to happen overnight, but the payoff is absolutely huge. And you can track your progress and see the positive changes as they happen, which is really rewarding.
Here's a realistic timeline for what you can expect. Within the first month or so, you'll actually start to feel the difference. The soil will be easier to work, and you'll see it drain better. By the middle of the season, your spade slice test will start to show you deeper root growth. And by the end of one full season, you'll see the ultimate prize, plants that stand strong through the heat and don't need nearly as much water. And these are your confirmation clues. These are the signs that tell you your detective work is paid off. When you notice you don't have to water as often, or when you can pull a weed and the whole root comes out instead of snapping off, you know your soil structure is getting better. Your spade will slide into the ground with less effort, and your plants will thank you by staying perky and happy on those hot afternoons.
So the case isn't closed, it's just beginning. You've gone from being a gardener to a soil detective. So my challenge to you is this. Go outside, grab your spade, and ask your garden, what is my soil telling me today? The clues are all there, just waiting for you to discover them.